Okay, so welcome everyone to our Understanding Legislative Sessions, Calendars and Processes and Timelines webinar. Thank you so much for being here. So this webinar is part of our monthly policy and advocacy training series for 2023-2024. This is actually our last training of the year, and our next event will be our celebration for our fellows. And this curriculum was developed for PWN policy fellows and our Health Not Prisons advocates. So just going over some really quick logistics and agreements. Note that we are recording and live streaming. And we already said it, but please share your name, pronouns, and location in the chat. Closed captioning is on, and there are no dumb questions. This is a space for us to learn together. We will be monitoring the chat, so if you want to put questions in the chat, we will definitely try to keep track of those. Yeah. There are two objectives for this webinar. The first one is going to be we learn how state legislative processes work, and then we're also going to learn how to look up legislative sessions and calendars. So for our fellows and advocates, we've already asked you and let you know to stay on for an extra 30 minutes so that we can run you through the process of actually looking up your calendar. And then just a quick note, we're removing any AI transcribing bots. We have enabled closed captioning, and we are happy to share the recording. But if you need any further accessibility assistance, please reach out. And thank you for understanding. So here are our amazing presenters for today. I'm going to have our presenters introduce themselves. I'll hand it over to Tana first.
Hi, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here with y'all today. I am Tana Pradia, she, her, hers. I am one on PWN Board of Directors, and I am the treasurer, but I am also one of the co-founders for PWN Houston and Texas Strike Force.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Webb. I'm the Public Health Policy Strategist at Equality Federation. I happen to manage our HIV advocacy program and support all 46 of our state partners in enhancing their HIV advocacy work in their individual states.
And I am Chauncey McGlathery. I'm the HIV Policy Manager here in Atlanta at Georgia Equality. Very happy to be here on this call with you today.
Thanks to all of you. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Super excited for this presentation. So I'm going to hand it off to Mike to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We can just go on to the next slide. We can go on to the next slide. And so you all hopefully will get these slides. This is actually a hyperlink. And I think I cheated for you all in your later assignment. And so if you click on this hyperlink, it actually will go tell you the legislative session dates, the time they convene and the time they adjourn per state. And it also lets you know the party demographics of your state legislature by that state. So if the House is run by Democrats or Republicans or vice versa. And so it's a very helpful link. And I'll make sure to provide, or they already have the link. I don't want to give you all too much of a cheat sheet because I know the exercise itself is useful, but you can have this to fall back on later on. Next slide. So Chauncey and I are going to give you the bare bones of what a state legislative process normally looks like, along with some particular, general best practices to tear Tana up to give you state-specific insight on what that looks like. And so as just the bare bones, usually what happens is a bill is introduced. Once that bill is introduced, it's immediately assigned to a committee. Not every bill is automatically have a committee hearing in every state, but if it's going to pass that legislative session or if it's going to make progress, it usually gets a hearing. The committee has to either vote in favor or kill the bill. And we're going to talk more what that means later on. But if it's in favor of, it goes to the full body of either that House or the Senate. The Senate or the full House either debate that bill on the House floor or the Senate floor, vote it up and down. Usually if it makes it to that point, it's favorable. And so it gets passed on to the next chamber and the process starts all over again. And usually if two versions of the bill gets passed by either chamber, they both have to agree through some type of resolution process in order for the bill to make it to the governor's desk. Next slide, please. I said a lot of words, so I'm gonna hurry up and break down what some of them mean. Session is the period during which legislative meets. Daily meetings are the Senate or the House. So again, when I told you that we're gonna drop a link or you're gonna have access to a chart of when session ends and begins, that's what we mean. It's basically when the first set of meetings happen and then when the last set of meetings are allowed to happen or the last date a bill is allowed to pass. Crossover is the deadline in which usually there's a crossover deadline. For example, most of the time is in the middle of session from when a bill has to cross either the Senate or the House in order for it to be applicable or viable to be able to pass to make it to the governor's desk. An amendment is any changes that happens to a bill that's in the process of this entire process. So for example, usually amendments happen in committee hearings or during floor votes when constituents or another lawmaker want to make changes to the bill to either make it less harmful or to either make it more progressive or to tweak any unintended consequences a bill might have. An act is once a legislation or a bill becomes law. And to kill a bill is actually a strategy that, especially now considering the political climate that we exist in, that you use to either delay a bill, you stop a bill from essentially passing. Sometimes, you know, as I'm sure Tana and Chauncey will talk more about, you just raise enough hell, you can slow a bill down enough where even though it might technically have all the votes within both chamber, but they take their time in considering it, and so it doesn't meet the deadlines in order to pass, and so you kill a bill that way as well. Next slide. If I'm going too quickly, or if you have any questions, this is a very free-flowing process. Chauncey and I believe in what we call it kitchen table conversations, so feel free to either drop your questions or thoughts in the chat, or to come off mute and to just answer them. I'm a very visual person, so I threw a lot of words at you, and so we also have a visual outline of what the legislative process looks like. So as you see, you have the idea. Usually the ideas can come from constituents like yourself and like us. The bill gets drafted usually by lawyers who we have to, you know, fuss with sometimes. As you see in the first chamber is usually the House or the Senate, get your committee hearing, your floor debate, and then it goes over to the second chamber, and then et cetera. Oh, and also the governor has a veto power. We always have to keep that in mind. Georgia was reminded of that a couple of times, of the powerful veto power the governor may have before the bill becomes law. Some key players. So we just talked about, and this is actually a picture of the Texas Senate. But you have your legislature, you have your lawmakers. These are elected officials who represent specific districts or constituents. You all have, I believe so, unless you're in a unique territory, have an elected official in the House, a state elected House and Senate member. They have the final say on all votes. Allegedly, all legislatures and lawmakers are equal. However, you will see some have more power than others. Next slide. For example, you have the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. The Speaker of the House are in most states, and the President of the Senate, they have the ability to call bills up for vote on the House or Senate floor. Usually, if the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate is in favor of a particular agenda item or bill, it has a high likelihood of passing. And it's similar if they're against something. And so it's usually a good, these are good people you want to get on your side early on, or to make sure that your agenda is in alignment with. However, they can also prepare you on what to be on defense of. For example, If you have a hard right extremist Speaker of the House, you need to be prepared to be on the defense for that legislative session. Committee chairs are also influential people within the legislative process. And so usually the committee chairs in most states, again, this might be different depending on what your individual state rules are. But usually committee chairs have the ability to call a bill that's once it's assigned to that committee up for a hearing. Not all bills are automatically called for hearings. And so usually you really want the committee chair to be in your favor, or to at least be convinced or persuaded to call a bill that you're in favor of up for a hearing. That being said, sometimes a bill is not in our favor. Like, let's say, for example, a bill that's recriminalizing HIV to an extent. And so the chair also has the ability to prevent a bill from being able to have a hearing. And as you know, if a bill is not able to have a hearing, then it's killed. And so very few states require every bill assigned to a committee to be voted on. In fact, I don't think we work with too many states that require every bill to be voted on. Now, here are some powerful committees that we should always be mindful of, regardless of what state we're in. Any committee that deals with money, that committee can be a budget committee, appropriations committee, finance committee, ways and means committees. These committees usually impact funding to some extent, as HIV funding, that could be any type of public health funding. For example, on a federal level, we recently saw the Appropriations Committee almost got HOPWA. And so even if you don't have a particular agenda item, for that legislative session, you should always be watching your finance committees to make sure there aren't any unintended cuts from those committees. The Judiciary and Civil Prudence Committee. These are, criminal justice type of committees. Those are good to keep an eye on when it comes to HIV decrim bills that are filed, but also usually bills that are attempting to recriminalize HIV in a certain way usually go through those committees as well. So those are good committees to be on. Of course, public health, health and human services committees are always committees to be mindful of and keep a pulse to. And any committee dealing with local governments. Sometimes those committees are called intergovernment affairs because oftentimes funding goes through those committees as well, especially funding for local governments. And we just talked about a little bit earlier about the all power mighty of the governor. Of course, the governor signs bills into law recently, and I'm pretty sure Tana could talk a little bit about this as well. For example, the Texas governor vetoed a ton of bills this past legislative session just because the Texas House and Senate did not pass one of his bills. And so in response, he just got mad and vetoed all of theirs. So they have to have a couple of special sessions recently just to catch up. And so so you cannot forget about the governor. Oftentimes we focus so much of our energy on educating the House, educating the Senate, and then when it gets to the governor's desk was not outreach or educated, and so or they had issues with it or whatever, and so they veto it. And so we always have to keep in mind of the powers of the governor and making sure that we're including them in the process if they're favorable, or be prepared to be on the defense if they're not favorable to our agenda. Come on, Chauncey, I know you have some special words.
I wanted to take this slide just because I think sometimes in our work, it can be initially disappointing to be in a situation where you've come to some type of session or some type of meeting expecting to meet directly with your representative. And for reasons that we often are all too accustomed to, the representative may get called out of their office for a vote. It could happen at any point. And here you are having a conversation with legislative staff. And one of the things I've heard said recently is to be careful how you experience or think about or register disappointment on your face if it turns out that you end up in a direct conversation with legislative staff. Legislators can't operate without staff, and staff play significant roles in the process and definitely influence the outcome of legislative decisions. A lot of our work has to do with personality You have to remember that representatives are people too. They have feelings that can be hurt. No representative likes to be taken for granted, to be assumed that they are in your favor automatically because of the initial or political party affiliation, or against you automatically. There are several times in Georgia where the only reason why we were able to pass decriminalization is with Republican support. So it would have been ridiculous for us to approach a legislator with this presumption that they would not be in our favor. So it's really, really important that we respect the legislative staff and actually be grateful for the opportunity to speak with them. I would also say, if find yourself in that situation, get the email address of the staff member that you're talking to, and see if there's a way in which, after you've had a conversation, you can follow up with infographics, with documents, with emails. Sometimes the staff will actually tell you specifically what they'd like to hear more about or see more of, what research, what's the bill number? Or this one of those obvious questions. Sometimes it's like that you don't know the bill number could be something that you've just simply forgotten. I would recommend that that's always be something that you actually have written down on a piece of paper or on your phone. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say about legislative staff. Thank you so much, Mike, for letting me have that moment.
So deep, and that was way deeper than I was even imagining. So thank you for that, Chauncey. And I see a question from Ms. Rose.
Thank you, Chauncey. I'm curious. I'm hearing that our facial expression and how we express ourselves can actually impact our future ability to actually get that time to be able to speak to even staff. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This is relationship building. Whether or not you are going to win on a particular issue or particular legislation, that actually is not the most important exchange. It is always the relationship that you establish with an office. This bill that you may be speaking on or taking an action on, it's not the only bill that will ever matter between you and that staff member or you and that office. So you have to always remember to maintain that relationship. And so it's very important, just like in any other relationship, it's very important that you do not turn off a legislative staff person, even after a vote. Even if it turns out the legislator votes against you on a particular issue, you cannot throw that relationship away.
Is it possible to not have that self-awareness to know, in fact, that you're coming across in a way that impacts your ability to communicate well? And do you have any recommendations for all of us to be able to do the repair work, if you like, in building that relationship to be a stronger one, instead of going, what was that all about?
Absolutely, absolutely. I will say role playing and rehearsing what you're going to say, actually going through the work of vocalizing what it is that you want to say and giving permission to the person who you're role playing with, because that should be an active exercise. Give permission, leave time for there to be feedback so that the person who you're role playing with can give you pointers and give you information about things that you may be doing with your body language that you may not even be paying attention to, right? The more you are rehearsed in these conversations, and even rehearsal is still with an asterisk, but right, because there's always going to be things that's going to happen. There's going to be things that other people are going to say. There are going to be things that the representative or the staff member is going to say. And it's really important that you not be so rehearsed that you can't be nimble to respond to whatever issues that come up in a particular context. But the more you are relaxed, the more that you are open to feedback, the more information. And in fact, sometimes a staff member can tell you what you did wrong, what it was that about your presentation that actually caused you to lose on the merits, or what you may do different the next time.
Plus
Helpful.
all of that. Yeah, I'm sorry. +1 all of that. And another thing that I just practice, and I know, but you know, just walk in with your game face on immediately. I'm one of those girls that can't control my facial expressions. And so as you see in this photo, that's actually me as a staffer working for a state senator. And that's basically was my face their entire time I would staff that committee. Because you always want to be receptive. You always want to be like that, you know, the person that an aide or a staffer is eager to get more information from, as Chauncey said, to be that point of contact. A lot of time, legislative sessions is very, very rapid pace and fast paced. And so even if you're meeting with a legislative staffer for that one meeting, they might not be working on that bill in that immediate moment, but like a month later, that bill might finally be moving. They remember, hey, I remember this nice coalition of group of people, this nice advocate who was very informative on this issue. Let me reach out to them and see if they can help or support this bill, or to even tell me, because oftentimes, as this slide says, like you come across hundreds of bills a week, and sometimes I might not remember the details of that specific bill. And so is it good or is it bad? And so I might reach out to you, Ms. Rose, now, because we just had a great meeting a month ago. I remember you were an expert on HIV issues. And so now I'm going to text you, I'm going to email you and say, hey, this bill is moving in my committee. What are your thoughts on it? And you always want to present yourself to legislative aides in that fashion. So even if it's not on that specific issue that you are briefing them on, you want to be a general expert for them on HIV issues in general. Next slide. Always remember that local governments have lobbyists, and lobbyists play a role oftentimes in legislative sessions. And so this is important because oftentimes our local governments are supposed to be fighting for local interests. What's local interests are EHE jurisdictions plans, right? So every city government, every county government has HIV priorities in their cities or counties. Are they elevating those priorities on a state legislative level? Most likely not. And so we can oftentimes remind our local governments that they can use their lobbyists to push for specific HIV agendas. Next slide. This is just a general overview of like the why the legislative process on a state level is so important. We saw in 2023 alone over 200 bills that was specifically HIV related. Most of them, over 50% of them, directly impacted HIV testing and treatment services. 62 of them were around PrEP and PEP access bills. These are great bills. These weren't even bad bills. We did see 24 HIV modernization or criminalization bills. Most of those were even good. I think we only saw maybe 4 bad HIV criminalization bills and 55 sex ed bills. And I would even say most of those were good as well. The sad part about all of this is most of them were not engaged on, meaning we didn't have enough advocates, we didn't have enough boots on the ground to actually, you know, meet with lawmakers to get them to push these bills. So they were filed, but they didn't move. And we're hoping, you know, new emerging leaders and established leaders like yourselves getting way more involved, we can see way more engagement and action on these types of bills. But these were 200 missed opportunities to really advance our cause. Next slide. And this is just a virtual map, a map, you know, I'm a visual person. So you can actually see where these bills are being filed. And as you see, it's across the entire United States of America, which of course, Texas being one of the darker areas. But fortunately for 2024, we're not in session because most of those are bad bills. But so you can see that these state legislative bills impact all of our states. If you click on, once you get these slides, you click on this link, you can actually click on each individual state. So I say you live in Arkansas, for example, you can click on Arkansas and you can see all the HIV related bills for that specific state. And this is only for 2023 yet. We have not started the tracking for pre-filing for 2024. So don't yell at me if you see a bill that you know is about to be filed for next year. Just email me for us to flag it for next year, but it's not going to be in the system yet.
Mike, can you say something on that last slide about the shade of blue and the correlation to the number of bills in that state?
The darker the state, then that's the higher volume of bills filed in that state. And what's unfortunate about this graphic is it's not clear if those bills are mostly good or bad. So for example, you see New York is also dark blue, because New York tends to file a lot of good bills. during the legislative session. Some of them are questionable, but I didn't say that, but mostly good. Texas is the opposite. And then also you see like there's Minnesota and Missouri as well. Even Arizona is a good shader. And so that gives you an idea of what also to prepare for next year on sort of like the veracity and volume of bills to be prepared for. Because the darker your state is, the more advocates I would say you would need to have involved, quite frankly. Any other questions, Chauncey, on that? This was just some basic lessons learned from my point doing this for the last 2 years, I think, with Equality Federation. Around coalition building, you know, HIV advocacy in particular is always more effective when it's rooted in coalition building. But it should include lobbying or people who have insider information, as Chauncey was talking about earlier, on like legislative strategy, who can give you those tips, who can tell you the real deal, whether it's hard to hear or not. We always have to be enhancing organizing capacity. How are we getting people to the capitals? How do we also, to be clear, meetings don't have to happen just at the Capitol. We were just reminded the other day that we need to start having meetings in people's districts as well, especially when we're not in session, because there's different ways to educate a lawmaker's office. Always involve people who live with experiences and ASOs. It's important, and I know this could be very controversial depending on your state, so I want to say that first. It depends on your state, but it's always important to have a combination of national and local advocacy partners. There's different advantages to both. That being said, national partners should be respectful and follow the leadership of local partners. Funders are critical. This work is not free. And then we should always have space and make space for general relationship building. Here's an overview of tactics and of course lessons learned. But the only thing that I would say is pay attention to laws that can be used to criminalize. That's always the case. All of our communities are being attacked at this point, mostly around body autonomy, and in finding weird ways to criminalize in different ways. For example, in Virginia last year, they passed a bill that forced HIV testing if people living with HIV engage with first responders, right? And we know that once they get, an HIV test result saying that we're living with HIV, they're going to use that information to criminalize us. In that case, if we happen to bite that police officer or to accidentally spit on that police officer. So that's why we always got to pay attention to laws that try to find unique ways to criminalize us. And I see your hand up, Ms. Rose.
Yeah, it's probably an answer that I already know, but I want to ask it anyway. The more that we interact with our local representatives and staff in particular, are they more inclined to reach out to us because they see our involvement like more frequently, so they have a better understanding of what we may like be able to assist them as well as a way to get that insider information?
Absolutely, especially if you're investing in a long-term relationship with them that's beyond like a specific issue, like a specific bill. If we're presenting ourselves as like, for example, a public health or HIV expert, whenever they have questions, I'm always answering, you know what I mean, via text message, their questions. And so it does develop that two-way relationship. So because you start, because we're such a loyal community, we're such an active community compared to other constituencies, lawmakers like a following, if that makes sense. And so once they start seeing sort of like the organizing power that you have, especially as a leader within your community or as a policy expert, they're going to want to be in your favor even more, if that makes sense. And so always show them the power of your organizing skills, but also presenting yourself as just, I'm here to support you no matter what. To be a resource is something I've always liked to remind them of. Sometimes I'm even flagging them, like it's gonna take a while for you to be on their radar, especially if you're a new relationship. And so don't be scared to flag them on things. Hey, we got this new report from our city government saying that there's a decrease in HIV transmission because of these tools that are working. You know what I mean? Just wanted you to keep you in a loop of information. They love that type of stuff.
What would you advise us for, like, you're unsure of like how to approach, to do the actual approach? You know what you'd like to say, but you don't know quite how to go about it.
And I hate that, government, and Chauncey, if you have thoughts on this, I would love them. I hate that government could come off as so intimidating because as a former staffer, most of these people are I'm not gonna say idiots, are just as human as we are. And so and information is like gold on the hill in most cases. And so as long as you're informative and facts-based, you're gonna be of resource. But how do you introduce yourself in a way that's not intimidating for a newcomer? I think is the question.
I would just add to that. Start off by being a person before you're an advocate. Be as human as we talk about. It matters that you put your personhood above your position and connect with the other person that you're talking to, because you'll always have that. That doesn't change. That doesn't vary. That allows you to be trustworthy. It's like these values that we used to talk about. All the things I need to know I learned in kindergarten. This is like one of those areas where that is really true. And for me, when I walk into an office, I read the room. I pay attention to pictures that's on the desk. If I'm in Alabama, I'm looking for either University of Alabama insignia or Auburn insignia. If there is a relationship there, I'm going to make reference to it. If the school, even if I don't have a connection to the school, if they have a reputable program of some sort, I'm going to highlight that. You know what I mean? Those are human connections, and those should actually be preeminent over the business. Now, you cannot take a lot of time with this. This is something that has to happen very quickly, very fast, because you have to respect the fact that there are 1,000 things going on in that office, and 9 times out of 10, you're not listed as one of those 1,000. So you have to do all of this work very quickly. You have to smile and keep it moving. And that's why I always think it's a good idea to have something that you can leave behind, including your contact information or a way for them to get in touch with you. You're only introducing yourself, always. Even if you've been there before, you're introducing yourself, and you want to leave a really good impression that makes that staff member or legislator want to talk to you again.
1,000%. And under the dome lobbying, that's traditional lobbying. I need to stop using jargon like that. But that's basically, insider of the like within the actual Capitol building, there's all types of in-person engagement going on. Whether you're meeting, a professional lobbyist is, making deals. And so it's not necessarily the traditional constituent level type of conversations that we're talking about. That's really under the dome lobbying. It's really deal making. And that's terrible to talk about like that. But you need somebody who has those type of abilities. Because sometimes that is how a bill gets passed. It's, someone behind the scenes making a deal. Wanted to leave over some resources. You get these are clickable as well. These are hyperlinked as well. These are all the HIV advocacy trainings we've done through 2023, including the last one was Impact versus Intent, Decolonizing our HIV advocacy efforts. We have the recordings are all in one folder. And also we have an overview of what you all don't know this, you all live this. Meaningful involvement of people living with HIV and why MIPA matters overview. That's mostly for our state partners. You all don't need that as much. But yeah, not our state partners like Georgia Equality, but others who are newer to this work. And so yeah, I think that's it. Always visit our website. Within the spreadsheet that highlights when session starts and ends, it also highlights our state partner in that particular state. and along with a clickable link for you to visit them. Always feel free to email me. Even if you want to reach out to a state partner, I can happily facilitate you talking to the right person within that organization, and can help make sure that we're being accountable to our values. I'll put it that way. And so, yeah, I think that wraps up. Anything else you would like to add, Chauncey?
No, that's it. Great job.
Any final questions before we hear from this amazing Texas trailblazer? Well, thank y'all so much, and thank you, PWN, for allowing us to have this space.
Yeah, thank you, Mike and Chauncey. And yeah, I just want to say I'm going to hold a little more space. If there's anyone who has any questions, you can feel free to pop them in the chat or just come off mute and ask. We have a bit of time, so it's totally cool.
Hey, it's MJ from Colorado. I use she, her pronouns. I wanted to just say I don't have a question, but I wanted to tell a quick story about the first time I ever went to a lobby day, which was my very first um time with PWN, and I was at an advocacy training, and that was the first lobby day I've ever been to. Um, you have to understand from my background, I had no idea that we actually went there and talked to our legislators. Like you could really talk to them, even tell them how you feel about things. Like what, you know? So anyway, long story short, I was trying to get my legislator. I'd sent a slip in, and as I looked peer through the window, I could see him leaving, and I'm like, wait a minute, but he got my slip, and then how he's sneaking out the back? No. So me and John Tenorio, which some of you may remember him, God rest his soul. Him and I decided to run towards the back where the stairs were, and I saw Mr. C.S. Lang C.S. Representative Lang C.S. Colorado representative running down the stairs, and I could see he was about 3 flights down. So I just hollered at him. I didn't know what to say. I just said, "Do you have 5 minutes for our next truck driver?" And that caught his ear, and he said, "I'll give you 5 minutes." So I ran down there and I talked to him, and 20 minutes later, we were shaking hands. He had realized that he had never, ever spoken to anyone living with HIV. He said he was completely shocked as to how healthy I looked, which, we get that a lot. And then he, to this day, when I still go back 7 years later for other lobby days, I am recognized by him still. And he is not my party. So I think it's pretty neat that he still comes and talks to me. So it does work to make that impression, that first impression. So, and I love lobby days. That's my fave.
MJ, I have to agree with you. I went to the Day on the Hill with Nashville Cares, and that was my first time speaking to legislators. I just got thrown in. But I spoke with a senator there, and to this day, he still asks Nashville Cares and everybody about me because he tells them that with my story, I touched him. So I agree with you, MJ, on that.
Absolutely. Those are both great examples. And MJ, that was so smart. Like what you did there was you led into what you knew was going to catch your lawmakers' attention. Former trucker, I would never have thought of that. But, that explains why even somebody from a different party would find, and you immediately engaging, want to talk more with you. And you said 2 minutes. So that means it's not going to take me a long time to do this engagement. But as you said, 20 minutes later, you were still talking with them. So that's a perfect example. So thank you for speaking up and providing that. And that happened in the hallway. So not all of this have to be like in a formal, sit down exchange. Absolutely, that was a great example.
Yeah, thank you so much, MJ and LaShonda, for sharing. If you have any further questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but I think we can move over to Tana's portion of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Tana, and Tana, just let me know when you want me to do the slides.
Okay, let's do this. Hello, everyone. So, PWN Texas Strike Force is a statewide cross movement of individuals and organizations ready to take action on behalf of marginalized communities to change the face of politics. Next slide. So let's take a look at PWN fighting criminalization. PWN Texas Strike Force was formed in 2018 as a mechanism to combat attacks from Texas legislators. Texas is off the chain. The coalition is led by PWN Texas members, and it's made up of allies as well as individuals and organizations ready to take action with us. And yes, they are. Next slide. So the rapid response team roles and responsibilities are, give me just a second, I had to move that. The rapid response team of the PWN Texas Strike Force, y'all, it's a critical component of what state-led level advocacy mobilization truly means, especially for this 88th Texas Leg session. It consisted of 6 members and will have 2 key roles. 1, monitoring bills and assessing mobilization is needed, and 2, maintaining contact with coalition to keep them engaged and ready to take action. 4 members will monitor bills, and 2 members will be responsible for updating the strike force, helping with mobilization with weekly emails. The majority of the rapid response team is composed of people living with HIV, and everyone receives a small stipend. But one of the things, this picture on the left, let's spill the tea. This was HB 369, which I'm gonna tell you, we stopped that bill, we mobilized that bill, and that bill died in committee. But one of the things that we did do as the strike force, we have a component of an administrative piece. We mailed out 285 emails to each legislator in the Texas House and the Senate. That is crucial to introduce yourselves when session starts, no matter how many years you've been doing. We do it every time session starts, which is every 2 years. Next slide. So the roles, and this is some of the responsibilities and trainings. We attend all trainings on Texas legislator, become familiar with the website and how to research and set up bill alerts. This is crucial. You have to learn how to navigate Texas legislator website, how to research key committees and legislators. Contact with your own legislators throughout session is very important, but it also builds a relationship. Learn to draft bill summaries and action alerts. Learn how to determine when, what type of mobilization is needed. The next slide, please. And yes, Mike, our session is every 2 years, like across a lot of other states are every year, but Texas is unique and it's only every 2 years, 2 even years. So how to form a team. This is one thing that we did. We created a shared channel for fast communications with PWN Texas Strike Force Rapid Response Team. We use Slack. The Rapid Response Team did daily updates. We monitor, we became familiar with everything, and we kept everything moving in Slack. We also use emails. We also text people. But once a bill is filed, it is assigned to one or more rapid response team. In this last session, we teamed. We had 2 on each team. We had 3 teams. We had 6 people. So we identified the committee of the assignments. We strategized action as needed, but also how to mobilize for change. And this is very important for the rapid response team. An action alert is developed for every bill that we monitor. We make graphics, talking points. If a public hearing has been scheduled, the bill summary and the action alert will go out before. If our members, our allies, and organizations need talking points, we make sure that we give our people everything that they need to mobilize. That is important, because one thing that I do know, when I started this work, I had to have a half a minute script, a minute script, a 2-minute script. Sometimes I had a 3-minute script, and they will not give you all of that 3 minutes. They will cut you down to a half a minute. So you need to be prepared. And we give our people enough time to look over those talking points. So when they get ready to mobilize and they get ready to speak, they have everything. Everything that they need to take action. We use Facebook, we do Facebook Live, we use other mechanisms to inform the public, but it's also, Facebook is really a key point. Twitter, Instagram, a lot of people use those. I don't, I'm old. So I use other people to use those social media platforms, but it's very important. Social media gets the information out. And request support from members. Our comms department, when help is needed to develop, we develop graphs, we do the testimony, additional research is needed. Whatever it is that we need, we use everybody that is a part of the strike force, but also PWN's comm team to make our graphics. Because if you don't understand some of the language, art is the key to anything. And request Texas Strike Force members to distribute the information to other networks, because we know we all sit on different boards, we all sit in different roles in the community. You network through whatever email list you can, where you are allowed to do. But remember one thing, economic justice matters, and you need a plan on how to pay that rapid response team, because they are the most important piece to mobilization and getting the action alerts done and doing all of the research to give community and allies and organizations all of the information to mobilize. I see, Ms. Rose, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Tanya. When you were forming the rapid response team, and you said that you had 3 groups, how did you decide to formulate what that group looked like? Were you looking at people's strengths? Were you ensuring
No, we don't look at people's strength. We train our people. We do trainings. You can come in, some of us, like for me, I've been part of it from the very beginning in 2018. In 2018, it was only 3 rapid response teams. This is 2023, we have 6. That's where the 3 teams. You take new advocates, you train them with the old ones, that's a part of the rapid response team, and you teach. No, you don't have to know everything that we do here in Texas. We train our people. We train you, we give you the opportunity to ask us questions. If you don't understand, we will hand walk you through every step of the way. That is a key part, is teaching, educating, but also being there for each other. That's what makes a strong team. You don't have to do this by yourself. That
Thank
answered
you.
your question?
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking for states that
Each state
aren't
is
as,
different. Yeah.
yeah, and you're really strong in that area and are really rocking it. And so I'm thinking that for other states that may not have that capacity.
And you know what? Y'all can call on the strike force at any time. We have no problems in training in other states.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. So what do? We keep the coalition. We concern audience informed with weekly emails. This is something what I just told y'all ahead just now a few minutes ago, but you must have access to a computer and reliable internet. That is crucial in this work also. You must have the devices in order to do this. And a lot of times we try to figure out if somebody doesn't have it, how can we fundraise for it? How can we, think about what the next person might need to be a part of this rapid response team? Next slide. So our commitment as the rapid response team, we start in December, 4 to 5 hour trainings. Session kicks off January to March. We start monitoring bills, drafting bill summaries, daily Slack check-ins, action alerts, mobilization. Advocacy Day, oral written testimonies, visit with legislators up to 2 hours per week, sometimes more than that. It depends on if a bill is moving. We might need to meet 3-4 times a week. It just depends on the bill itself. But one of the main things that we do, we watch for HIV crim bills for the simple reason the language that some of the people that write these bills might use, spitting, biting, bodily fluids. They might use all kind of tricky words. And if you go into the website itself and put HIV and something pops up, because we might get action alerts at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you put in those key buzzwords, it will alert you, especially on HIV criminalization. So from March to May, some monitoring bills, mostly mobilization. Visits with legislators up to 2 hours per week. Debrief after session ends with the rapid response team. What went well and what needs to change? Because you have to think about it. Every other year in Texas, what worked 2 years ago might not work in 2025. So you always have to have a strategy of what do I need to do different? Go back to your notes from the previous years and look at all of that and say, hey, this is not working this time. We need to change that. Or if you need to add more rapid response team members, then that is the time to do that. And your time will depend on your state legislative calendar. For Texas, we're in session every other year, January through May. But I'm gonna tell you, with the governor that we have, we're in 4th session right now. So it depends on your governor, how many sessions you will have, how many bills like Mike said earlier, how many bills that might be vetoed because he didn't like the way something turned out. So we're in 4th session right now. Next slide. And this is our advocacy day. Our advocacy day, we took, I know, 77 to 85 people on advocacy day. And y'all, we made sure that we had buses coming out of Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. We paid for gas for people to drive from El Paso. So these are people all over Texas, not just Houston, all over Texas. And we had a fabulous time. But one thing that I want you to know is when we go to Advocacy Day, we make sure our people are taken care of. We make sure our people have everything that they need to talk to the legislators. We train them before they go to the offices. We make sure we have thank you cards. We make sure that they have talking points, and we make sure that they have handouts to leave with them. And one of the things we also like to do is make sure that we have the language chart. How you talk to us is very important. If someone is talking to you in a way that is demeaning or whatever, you have the right, but you also always have to say thank you, even if you don't want to. It is always good to be respectful, because one thing that I do know, I don't like everybody, but if something comes up in session and a HIV crim bill, they'll email and say, hey, did y'all see this bill coming down? They will reach out to us because we are the experts on HIV. So, and also you think about it, it's not, in Texas, it's not just criminalization, reproductive rights, trans rights and justice. We have a slew of everything. Everything that can happen happens in Texas. Next slide. Any questions for me? I hope I didn't go too fast. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
We have one question in the chat from Wanda. How do you raise funds?
How do we raise funds? You know, I think this session here, we took some funds that we had from a grant that we gotten for our IVE work, and we had some left. So, you know, we used some of that, but you just really have to, you know, use your allies, use the organizations, see what they can give you to make this happen. You know, it's about, you know, building that trust, building a trust between organizations, building a trust between pharmaceuticals, building trust with whoever you need to get what you need. Fundraise, do whatever. I mean, it's not always easy, but we do find it one way or another. And PWN National helps us find it if they find someone that will give us funds.
And this is a little known secret as well, if Tanya doesn't mind me.
Go ahead, Mike.
Is most elected officials have a campaign funds that they can use to also support advocacy days. And so, for example, if you have like a champion lawmaker in your city or state who supports, you know, HIV priorities, they can sponsor a bus. They can sponsor folks to get to an HIV advocacy day as well, or they can sponsor food.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any more questions?
We have another question from Kenya in the chat. Can we join the rapid response team if we are in another state?
Let me say this, our rapid response team, we had someone from Maryland this year. So anyone across the country can join us. We are not, we accept anyone and everyone that wants to make a change, because always remember one thing. We don't live single issue lives, but also if we want to make a change, we got to be that change, and we got to do the work to make that change happen. You can make a win by one vote. But one thing that I will say about the Texas Strike Force and the Rapid Response Team, we have done some great things for the state of Texas. Like we won the ADAP thing, making sure that all Texans had medication. We did that. We hold elected officials responsible because, number one, we vote them in. We have the right to hold them accountable for what we vote them into office. And always remember, just because we go to Advocacy Day and they're in Austin, they're local too. So we have the right to go to their offices and talk to them and bring up, hey, this is what you said when you said you wanted my vote. What's going on? Why aren't you, working for the people? You have that right. Ms. Rose.
You spoke about the keywords that would let you know alerts on specific words. Is that something the chapter itself identifies for the strategic issue? How do you decide what the keyword is?
Well, I'm gonna tell you one of the things, one of our biggest, I'll tell you who trained our rapid response team. Benita Ray trained our first rapid response team. And Ciro, we joined Ciro. We joined Mike, Federation, Equality Texas. We use whatever avenues that are in place. You utilize all of that. They train you, they teach you, they educate you on key words. It is important to really tap into the organizations that are doing the work and how do you work together to make change across the country, not just Texas, across the country. Because when I look at the work and I look at advocacy and I look at trainings, I'm looking at the whole United States, not just my state, because it affects all of us. What happens in Texas is eventually going to go down that pipeline to another state. I'm talking about my state, but I ain't talking about my state.
I hear you. I really appreciate it. It's very helpful.
Yeah. Anyone has anything else?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, thank you for everything that you shared. My thoughts are not really questions, but more like just absorbing the information that I've heard from all the amazing presenters tonight. But like as a person who has had a very difficult time with the whole voting experience, because I'm from Louisiana, and for a long time I have not been able to vote. I think it's changing because I had a felony from 20 years ago, but there's been an issue that kept me from voting for a long time there. And in recent years, I travel a lot, so I'm not anywhere long enough to become invested in the voting process. So I may be here 3 months, then I'll be here 3 months, and then I'll be here 3 months. So I'm kind of like in Oklahoma 1 minute, in New York 1 minute, in Atlanta 1 minute, in Louisiana 1 minute. And now because I'm looking to settle in a state again, and I'm still kind of torn between New York and Louisiana, but I know that I want to be more involved in the politics because I feel like when I was coming up, what I'm very interested in having the conversations that a lot of people don't want to have. Like we shun a lot of people for not voting, but we don't really want to have the legit conversation about why a lot of people don't vote. And I'm very interested in having that conversation because I think as a person who wants to become more involved and has been disenchanted by the process, I think it's important for us all to be able to hear each other rather than just saying, if you don't vote, you're a part of the problem. you know, that gives people, like, some people are rebellious. You give them a reason to be petty and to not be involved by shunning them or by condemning them. And so, like, having a real legit conversation to get people to the table and to really understand, and also to create the type of organization that actually gives us viable candidates who actually reflect us and who actually look like us, and not just having to take what they give us. Like, because I feel like, you know, in this binary system, even though you have all of these other representatives who are not Democratic or Republican, typically the Democrats and the Republicans are the front runners. And the reason why they're the front runners is because they're backed by religious organizations a lot of the times. And these religious organizations don't like nothing. And so, like,
let me say this to you. One thing that I don't tell people that they need to vote, I ask them, how can I get you to vote? What is important to you? Not what's important to me. What is important to you? How can I get you and educated on the issues that are important to you? Because we all come from different walks of life. We all go through different things. So what is it that I can do and help you with to get you to vote? Not what I want you to vote for. I never tell anybody that you need to vote. No, what can I do to change your mind about voting? And that's a simple question. What's important to you?
and then who is it? Like, how do we find out? Say, for example, you got one candidate running who everybody know, who got a strong platform, and he have a strong platform, but then you have a new candidate who's speaking all of the issues that you believe in, but he's never held office before. So, like, it becomes, are they gonna do what they say they're gonna do, or are they just saying that so they could get in office? Like, like, I don't know. I'd be pessimistic about things like that. Like, this is very interesting to me, and I'm trying to learn. And, like, when I'm drafting my policy or my practicum, I want, like, because I have so many ideas, I'm trying to, like, scale it back, and I'm listening to all of the information that y'all are giving me, and I want what I write, and when I'm prepared to learn how to do, like what y'all said, like, make your short scripts and draft your bill, making sure that, because I have a creative mind, so I can go all over the place like I'm doing right now. And I want to know how to condense it and scale it down, like,
Let me say this
and
to
make
you.
it specific.
Let me say this to you. I'm a perfectionist, so it takes me 5 or 6 times before I do anything. And it's no shame in that. It's no shame in that. You find what your nick is, what it is that you want to talk about, how you want to, we all learn different, how you learn, and then you take it and you put it into something that's fabulous. It takes time.
Yes.
Nothing is done. Rome isn't built overnight.
I know
So
that's right.
leaders
Thank
aren't
you.
built overnight. So just, keep doing what you're doing, getting in all the information. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Tana, and thank you to Mark and Chauncey as well. These presentations were amazing, and we really appreciated having you on. Thanks so much. And reminder to our fellows and advocates, keep staying on, because we're going to do our exercise where we look up, everyone looks up their state's legislative calendar.